Good morning. Nice loud good morning from down here. Somebody's awake, very enthusiastic. It's really lovely to be here this morning. I'm Vicky, one of the clergy team here at St Michael's, and I'm going to be sharing a few thoughts as we continue our sermon series on Sabbath, a day that we take in the week to Sabbath, a day once a week, which will include stopping, which we looked at last week. Today we're thinking about Sabbath rest. And over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be thinking about Sabbath in terms of delight and worship. And it's really important to take all these sermons together. This talk that you'll hear this morning is part of a whole. So please do catch up on ones that you might miss so that you get the full picture of Sabbath in all its glory. Because Sabbath is glorious, or it has the potential to be if we can receive it that way. So before we delve into Sabbath rest, my question is, how are you getting on? What is Sabbath looking like for you at the moment? Are you having a go at putting into practice what we've been thinking about over the last couple of weeks? Oh, yes. You don't need to answer, don't worry. Just reflect on that yourself. How is it going? I wonder if you're noticing a bit of resistance. There will be resistance. Let's not pretend otherwise. Anything that helps us become more like Jesus is going to meet with some opposition. And let's remember, we are not going to get Sabbath sorted overnight. It takes time. It takes practice. We can begin to put into place things that will help, but it takes a while. This whole sermon series is under the title, Practicing the Way. Practicing means we haven't got it sorted yet. It's like practicing Christians. We're still working on it. Anyway, Sabbath rest. We're going to frame our thinking this morning around three questions. Why is Sabbath rest a good idea? Why do we find it so hard? And what could it look like? So why is Sabbath rest such a good idea? Sabbath rest is a gift. In our reading, Jesus says, "Come to me and I will give you rest." It's a gift. I think all of us yearn for rest in some way, a time that restores our souls, something that recreates us and gives us life. Do you ever get to that point in the day? For me, it's about 2:30 in the afternoon, and you've been so busy that you just kept on working and you've forgotten to have lunch. And you realise that you feel a little bit weird, a little bit lightheaded, and you just need to stop and eat something. That's what the gift of Sabbath is like, making sure we stop and eat something before we start feeling a bit weird. A gift given with the receiver in mind. Rob and I have 2 boys, and we don't give them what we want for their birthdays. We give them what they want, at least we try to. We want to give them something that they will delight in, that they will love and enjoy, that will build them up. And we give to them simply because we love them. They haven't done anything. It's not because of that. It's just because we love them. It's the same with Sabbath rest. It's a gift to us because we are loved. It's a gift for us to love, to delight in, to enjoy, and for us to use and benefit from again and again. I wonder if it feels like that to you. Remember, we're all still working on this, so don't panic if it doesn't feel like that just yet. But remember that we are loved children of God, which is why this gift is given to us. But let's never forget that we are loved children of God. And actually, Sabbath itself helps us to remember this. If we know we are loved, then we have nothing to prove. My boys know that they are loved. Despite our parenting fails, Rob and I have tried to make sure that at least our boys know that. It is just because of who they are. They are our boys. And who we are is children of God. This is where our identity lies. Not in our job title, the number of friends that we have, how busy we are, how many expensive holidays we can take, how big our house is, but in being a child of God. If we know that, if we know that we are loved so much, if we know that we are a child of God, then we have nothing to prove to anyone ever. Which frees us to take Sabbath rest, because we don't have to say to anyone, look how hard I work, look how busy I am, look how important I am, look at all the things. We can rest, confident in who we are and with nothing to prove, because we are so much more than what we do. And we can remember that God will provide. Don't worry, he will keep the world turning while we take a bit of time off. He's got this. We don't have to avoid taking time off because we can trust God to keep things going and to provide all that we need. He's trustworthy and can actually manage without us. He was getting along just fine before we came along. He'll carry on just fine afterwards. Sabbath reminds us who it is that is in charge here, and it's not us. I wonder how we receive that gift of not being in charge or in control of everything. Not always easy for control freaks, speaking for myself. How do we trust God with our income or our career if we rest one day a week? Who is in charge of us and how we live? That's why Sabbath is a good idea. It's a gift. It reminds us that we're loved and reminds us that we are not in charge. And God modelled it. The creator of the universe in Genesis 2, after 6 days of work, rested. Now, regardless of how literally you take the story, rest is an important part of it. And Jesus modelled Sabbath rest too. Well, he modelled it, and he is it. Jesus is the one in whom we find our rest, our freedom, our joy, our delight. Verses 28 and 29 of our reading say this: I will give you rest. I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. Yes, it's a gift. Jesus, Sabbath rest is a gift. He is Sabbath, the one that we go to for rest, the one that we build a relationship with, the one whom we spend time with to restore our souls. So he is Sabbath, but he also does Sabbath. He's often unavailable to other people. He withdraws to a lonely place. He prays with his disciples. Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath. And Sabbath is so that we have life to the full. That's why Jesus came, not so that we have to miss out or deny ourselves or sit and recite Psalms for one day a week, but so we can, as it says in John 10, have life to the full. Sabbath isn't about denying ourselves. It's the opposite. It's a feast. It's to be enjoyed and celebrated and full of fun and relaxation and good things. It's a restorative exercise. It's not a burden. It's a gift. So if Sabbath is a gift, why do we find it so hard? If it's a gift, if it's lovely, if it's good for us, why do we find it hard? Well, maybe you don't. Maybe I'm preaching to myself here. Maybe you're good at switching off and not doing chores for a whole 24 hours, at choosing to worship and spend time with friends, but not all of us are. So I'd just like to think about why we might find it hard. Sabbath is so countercultural. It really, really is. In a world where we're told to accumulate things for ourselves, where our worth is in our productivity and in what we own, where being busy is a compliment and shows how important we are, just notice how many times you reply when someone asks you how you are. Oh, you know, busy. And one of the first questions we ask when we meet someone for the first time, what do you do? So being busy and identifying ourselves by a job title is so often what we aspire to. Sabbath says no to all of this. We don't need to prove ourselves by our output or our job title. We don't need to trust ourselves or our salary to provide, because Jesus says, come to me. Trust me to provide for you, and let me show you how to be fully yourself. Sabbath is saying that our identity is in Jesus and that he is in charge, not us. It's so countercultural, and going against the tide is hard. And yet it's a gift. It's a gift to us. And if it's a gift, how does that sit alongside the other thing that it is, which is a commandment? It's there in Exodus 20, along with loving God, honouring your parents, and not killing anyone. God obviously thinks it's quite important. But God's commandments aren't there just as rules to keep us in check, to stop us enjoying ourselves. They are there to enable a way of life that helps us to stay safe and enables us to thrive. It is good for us not to kill each other. It is good for us to take a Sabbath day. These commandments are to bring us freedom. It's like having rules in a tennis match. Imagine the chaos if you just put a random number of people in a field with a ball and a couple of rackets, no white lines, no rules. Chaos. But with clear rules, a good match can be played that is fun and best for everyone to thrive, to enjoy, and to do well. So what could it look like? We've got the theory, the theology, we know it's good for us, but what does Jesus giving us rest look like and how we do it? What could it look like? Now, I choose the word could on purpose. Not what should it look like, because the word should brings with it a whole load of guilt drivers. But could, that has possibilities and creativity and ideas and potential. What could Sabbath rest look like? So my first question, is Sabbath more than an absence of work? To which my answer is yes. Sabbath rest is the presence of rest, an activity in itself, the presence of rest. Not just an absence of work, because if parenting is our work, then Sabbath isn't even an absence of work because we're always parents. Or maybe we're retired or unemployed, so we don't do traditional work. Maybe we're students. So it's more helpful to think of Sabbath as the presence of rest. But what does that even look like? And I think there's a question that we can ask ourselves here to work that out, and that is, what is it that brings us life? What is it that restores our soul? Another word for Sabbath rest is recreation, which literally means recreation. What is it that recreates us, that makes us new, that puts back in all that life can so easily take out of us, that restores our souls, that is a gift to us? And if we can answer that, I think we can begin to see what Sabbath could look like. And it will look different for each of us. We're all different with different tastes, preferences, personalities. Our younger son, George, was given a bike for his 18th birthday. It came in about 19 different boxes and little plastic bags, and it all had to be put together. My idea of a complete nightmare. Look at those tiny little screws that you have to work out which one goes where before you can ride it and make sure it doesn't fall apart. Terrifying. George spent a very, very happy day putting it together, checking all the details and getting it just right. He loved it. It brought him life. For him, putting the bike together was part of the fun. And now he gets to freewheel all around Oxford and really enjoy it, which was the bit that I wanted to do without the bit beforehand. But we are all different. And our situations are all different. Some of us live alone. Some of us are in families. Some of us are in shared houses. Some of us live with host families. Some of us go out to work. Some of us work for ourselves. Some of us are retired. Some of us are unemployed. Some of us are parents. Some of us are a mix of all those things or something else altogether. But the question remains the same. What is it that brings us life? My Sabbath is on a Friday, and it's weird having a Sabbath before you preach on it, because you just ask yourself, am I doing this right? I know there's no should, I know that, but it did keep creeping in there. I knew that I needed to go out, or I would end up wasting the day either scrolling on my phone or, even worse, cleaning the bathroom. It needs doing. I have time on my Sabbath, so why not? Because we are not driven by should, and because cleaning the bathroom does not bring me rest or recreate me in any way, shape or form. So instead, I got the bus to the Gloucester Road, and I spent a very happy morning going from coffee shop to charity shop in the sunshine. Yeah, see, it was lovely. And then I came home and I had lunch, and then I had a nap. I also did a bit of crochet. Doing something creative, making something, is life-giving for me. So I tried to do some of that, something different each time on my Sabbath tea. And then I watched a film in the evening, and it was lovely. This is not lovely for all of us. What is it for you that brings you life? It will be different from what recreates me, but what recreates you? If you run out of milk on your Sabbath, go and get some. You can't enjoy a cup of tea or a bowl of cereal or a cheese sauce without it. If you need it, go and get it. No should. Where does that even come from? Jesus picked and ate grain on the Sabbath. We can read this in the end of Mark 2. Because he needed to, And when he was challenged on this, he said, the Sabbath was made for man, for people, and not the other way round. Sabbath is made for life. Sabbath is made for you. Sabbath is a gift. Come to Jesus and receive it. Eat the grain. Buy the milk. Jesus gives you Sabbath because he is the ultimate life giver, the ultimate recreator. If we come to him, if we build our lives on him, he will give us rest. Back to the idea of rest being an activity, the presence of rest, because if it's an activity, it needs to be intentional. Jesus was quite intentional about Sabbath. He made choices to withdraw. And we too need to be intentional about our Sabbath. Now, I can see that might fill some of us with dread. Sabbath is now just another thing to organise on top of my already busy schedule. So how do we balance the planning of it with it being a gift? Let's call it choosing. Not planning. Choosing what you're going to do is much more fun than planning it. Choosing the things to do that give you life. What's not to like? Because if you don't choose, you'll just fall into whatever's easiest. You'll go to the quick fix because you don't know what else to do, and at the end of the day, you won't feel rested or created or satisfied at all. Or worse, you might even have cleaned the bathroom. But keep choosing throughout the day. Choose not to check emails. Choose to have that extra cup of tea. Choose to talk and to listen to someone that you love. Play music and dance around the house. Choose not to take yourself too seriously. Choose the things that bring you life. Choose Sabbath. Choose Jesus. There's often, isn't there, a difference between what we know in theory and what we actually do. I know I want to lose weight, but hey, I like crisps. Our desires often win. Because they are powerful. They're really powerful. And that's why we have to make a choice. That's why we have to be intentional. And it takes time. Don't expect this to be sorted straight away. And we also need to choose what to do with that technology that sits in our pocket. The mobile phone. Now, there's lots of good things about it, but there are lots of not so good things about it too. What is your relationship with technology? Which of you is in charge? And how do we rest from that? How do we trust God with our work if we're not contactable for a day? How do we trust God with our relationships if we're not checking our messages all the time? And is this even realistic, especially if we live on our own? As a family, we've always done our summer holidays without our phones. And some of us are better at this than others, not looking at anybody. And it can be done with teenagers. It really can. Yes, after some what I would like to call robust discussions. But it is an effort because you have to choose to do something else, to talk to someone, to play a game, to go places, to listen to music, to have some fun. And these are more of an effort. Now, we've, as I say, found that it often starts with arguments, but now it brings life, it builds relationship, because spending time together is lovely, and we feel more important to one another because we're not distracted or feel second place to everyone else that's in our phone. It can be life-giving, and it can be Sabbath. But how do we rest from that fear of missing out if we're not available 24/7? And how do we rest if we're a parent? You're always a parent. You can't stop being a parent any more than I can stop being Vicky. But I can't rest. I don't need to rest from being Vicky. What I do need to do is give life to Vicky so that she can survive and thrive and be all that God calls her to. Sorry, that's turned out into weird third-person language. But in the same way, as parents, we need to find a way that gives us life, or that we give life to each other, to enable us to thrive and be all that God calls us to in our parenting. Probably the question to ask is still, what brings us life as a family? Picnics, trips out, games, films, music? How can we enjoy spending time together and build our family unit? That changes as children grow, but let's keep asking the question. And let's help one another to find that rest. And let's do what we can and not what we can't. There will be times when we can't rest for 24 hours, when it is just impossible. When our children are tiny, when someone we know and love is in hospital, or we're caring for someone very ill, or any other reason. And Jesus knows this. We can still come to him. He will sustain us and he will be with us in the continual work of love and care. We take the Sabbath, we take the rest when we can, as we can, for the little time that we can. What could Sabbath look like, even just for 10 minutes, in this situation that I find myself in? The answer to that might just be having a bath by yourself, and that's okay. No should. Absolutely no beating ourselves up. That's not a gift or delight or freedom. I love this verse from a hymn that we sometimes sing at the 9 o'clock service. It might be familiar to some of us. Drop thy still dews of quietness till all our strivings cease. Take from our souls the strain and stress, and let our ordered lives confess the beauty of thy peace. This is a gorgeous prayer of coming to Jesus and saying, please give me this gift of rest. Please, would you be in charge here? Please help me to know that who I am is only found because of who you are. I've written this out on a little card if you'd like to take one to remind you to receive this gift of Sabbath. They're on the reception desk outside in the foyer. Please do grab one over coffee if that would help you to remember to receive this gift. What is life-giving for you? What could Sabbath look like for you? Because Sabbath isn't an optional extra just to do if we feel like it. It's not the chocolate sprinkles on top of the cappuccino. It's the very shot of coffee itself, without which the cappuccino wouldn't taste right and wouldn't even be a cappuccino. Sabbath is imaginative. What could it look like? It's restful. We stop being productive or thinking that we are indispensable. It's formative. It helps us to become more like Jesus. It's prophetic. It's communal. It's a gift. It's revelatory. It's countercultural. It's Jesus. And we can choose Sabbath rest because we have a Father who loves us, who models rest and says, come to me and I will give you rest, whom we can trust to give us our identity and to provide for us. If I could invite the band to come back up, because we're going to worship again in just a moment, and we have the chance to receive prayer and to respond to what we've heard this morning if we would like to. Please do come and ask for prayer for anything that you've come with this morning, but there's some specific things that I wonder whether we might like prayer for, particularly this word should. If this word should is dominating your Sabbath, if you're trapped by this, I ought to, I should, if you're trapped by that, please come and ask someone to pray with you, because Sabbath isn't about guilt. Sabbath isn't about ought. Please come and pray for freedom from that. If Sabbath doesn't feel like a gift for you, or if you'd like to receive the gift of Sabbath, please come and ask someone to pray with you. Perhaps the prayer ministry team could come up as we begin to worship. And if you're a bit stuck and you'd like to pray for creative ideas as to how to do this Sabbath thing, if you're not sure what it is that gives you life, please come and ask someone to pray for you. And especially this morning, we'd love to pray for parents. It would be great to pray for parents and families this morning to be able to enjoy Sabbath together. So come as a family once you've picked your children up from their groups, or just as parents, if you just need restoration as a parent, please come and ask someone to pray with you. And please do talk about all this in life groups. If you're not in one, you can sign up for one today, but talk about how you're getting on. Talk about what's hard for you and about what you're discovering about yourself and about Jesus. Or talk to someone over coffee after this celebration, especially if you're not in a life group. And there are materials for life groups, but if you're not in one, you can always access those via the website.